We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Gamar Joba, and welcome to the Anadromist. This is Byrne coming to you from Tbilisi, Georgia, in the middle of a valley between the two Caucasus mountain ranges, on what is actually a broiling day outside. And I am glad to have a little bit of air conditioning. But I'm going to turn it off so the sound doesn't interfere with the proceedings. So there. Well, today I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Brandon. The same Brandon I talked to a couple weeks back, and I put his Anadromous dialogue up on the channel. And he was asking me a very serious question. He's, I guess, what we call Gen Z or a Zoomer. I hate these words. I've never once called myself a boomer. And when people say words like that, I'm like, no, don't. They don't really signify that much. It lets us know something. It used to be people were more concerned about the decade that they kind of grew up in and during their formative years. But now people are in this whole generation thing, and I tend to find it a bit superficial. So he asked me, though, because for younger people today of all sorts of generations, it is so hard to concentrate on reading and to remember what you read because we are distracted by screens. I have, as you may notice, called this fighting against weapons of mass distraction. And that is, in fact, what we are dealing with here. We are dealing with some serious hardware that keeps us entertained, distracted, glued to the screen, however you want to call it, endlessly. And so I thought what I would do is give some sort of answer to this. Now, if you're older like me, you may have already developed some tactics for dealing with these things. Although even today, older folks like me are still subject to the same distractions. We just have a device inside of us that says something like, no, I can't keep doing this. and so we fight, I think, a little harder to retain our attention spans and our memories. Unless, of course, you grew up as just completely glued to the television screen or were an early video gamer or whatever, then you too have your own weapons of mass distraction, and the internet has only added more of them. So, before we get into this, let me just remind you, yes, you need to subscribe to this channel. Yes, you need to hit like so that the algorithm finds us. The algorithm, it's out there. The mysterious. And yet people are treating it as kind of a divinity. No. Maybe a demon. In the old Greek sense of the word. Well, then you could, there are PayPal links down below if you wish to contribute, which is a good way to do it. There is, however, now a new Patreon page, and the link will be for that, and I'll explain more of that at the end of the video. So, meanwhile, let's get into this. Let's fight against weapons of mass distraction by developing our memories and developing an attention span. And I'm going to give you my practical answers. Some of these I gave to Brandon when I was texting him. Oh, the mind reels. To me, if you want to forget anything, text it. That's the gist of it. So let's talk about this, the smartphone, the screens surrounding us. How do we deal with this stuff? Well, first of all, for your phone, get rid of every notification you do not absolutely need to live. And I am absolutely serious about this. You don't need news updates. You don't need entertainment updates. You don't need to find out what's happening on YouTube. Why? Because nothing that anybody says on YouTube demands an immediate answer in the real world. So you're walking around and you suddenly see someone's commented on your YouTube video or someone's dropped a new YouTube video. Why does this matter when you're not at home? It doesn't. It simply doesn't. So get rid of everything. I only have 3 apps that I currently use, and some of these may not even be considered apps. 1, I have Facebook. And trust me, I wouldn't use it if it wasn't for the fact that I'm living in Georgia and people use Facebook like text messaging. And in fact, that's mostly what they do. That and posting photos of what they're doing and such. They don't use it the same way Americans do, which is to spread, your favorite political thoughts and make people laugh. Used to be it was for sharing about your life. Georgians do that a little more. Every now and then you do see the political thing, but it's usually something that's actually immediate to the environment. I have that because I need to know when someone is locked out and can't get into the house when they're coming here. It's just that simple. That's how I meet up with people. Secondly, I just got WhatsApp. No, I'm not giving you my number. Only a couple people have it. And unless you have to get it, you're not getting it because I'm not interested in more notifications from that. Only a couple people have it. And I did that specifically because whatever. They couldn't do Facebook, which is fine, or whatever. And I have text messaging, the usual SMS thing. That's it. There's nothing I need to know from X, nothing I need to know from YouTube, nothing I need to know from any other site that I might be subscribed to, because there's nothing I need to know that can't wait till I get home. So when I'm out and about, I'm not being bothered very often. I will occasionally look through and see, did I get any email or is there anything happening? And then I'll immediately put my phone away. Here's the next bit of advice. Take books with you and read them whenever you have a spare moment, particularly if you have public transportation. And by book, I do not mean an ebook. Why? Because you're still involved with the screen. It's too easy to just kind of jump over and check your email. It's too easy. And there's something about digital files that I'll come to in a minute. They're just not memorable. And we need that. I often take bus rides. Like, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I knew I was going to see the movie F1, which was way out at the eastern edge of the city. And I knew it was an hour ride to get there. So I said, oh, goody. So I took a book and read it all the way there on the little Marshrutka bus and read it all the way back. So I got 2 hours to spend reading, and that was important. So thirdly, when you travel, do not allow yourself to fall into the habit of mindless scrolling, watching videos, and especially playing video games. And get the stuff out of your ears. If you want to actually develop an attention span, and more importantly for so many people, a situational awareness of the world around them, get the shit out of your ears. Because that's just distraction. That, but I want to listen to my music. Yeah, well, you're creating your own soundtrack in your head. And you're saying, yeah, but the world outside is so noisy. Well, yeah, it is. And you should get mad at it rather than hide from it. You should think, we've got to do something about this, rather than just put yourself in a cocoon. So I'm just saying this. Fourthly, if you're a parent and you have already opened the floodgates on your children, you're going to have to find ways to reel them back in. Start with meals. Set the example. For instance, I see this all the time, and I just don't understand it. Why are there any phones by children in their hands in any meal, both inside the house and outside the house? Who allows this? Well, lots of people do. Why? They're not thinking about it. They think that's just, children get put on these devices at very young ages now. And we tend to look at them as babysitters. You see, they're not asking questions. They're not, if they're just distracted, if a 10-year-old has a phone and it's just like scrolling through it, they're not going to be bothering you. But guess what? That's the whole job of being a parent, is being bothered by your children and answering questions and noticing things. And one of the things you should notice is how much time they spend scrolling. And do you let them take the phone to bed with them at night? Speaking of that, we'll get to this in a moment. But anyway, one of the things you can do now, I think better parents now are starting to understand the hell we've unleashed on our children. Now, I do read articles now and then where people say, well, people are just making too much of this. We grew up with the television and look how we turned out, to which I respond, exactly, that's the point. Look how you turned out. We haven't got the various kinds of loneliness epidemics and relational issues and endless divorces in our society because people weren't looking at their televisions and such, weren't distracted into that. Now the situation is much greater. So how do you reel it back in? Well, you can't do it all at once. You can't just have this big moment. You have to start, for children, you have to start pulling bit and bit by, and then confess to them how hard it is for you. Talk to them about the nature of addiction. And see, you have to set the example here. So that's where your part comes in. Fifth, make some places in your house or apartment no tech zones. And what I mean by this is just, when you're in this part of the house, you're not allowed to do anything with technology. I'm not saying this as some sort of hard, fast rule, but I'm simply saying there should be places that are quieter. And one of the problems we suffer from now is there's just so much noise in the environment. And that noise is also what's happening in the earbuds. It's also what's happening by having, in Georgia, no one seems to understand the concept of not many people wear anything in their ears. So you just hear people watching YouTube on the bus over here or over there. It's just like, oh my goodness. I can't even begin to say how distracting that is. However, I do keep reading. But also, maybe set some rules for when people visit you, saying, no phones tonight, or put them away except for emergencies. And we'll get to that kind of exception in a moment. Get out of the house. Go take some walks. And sometimes do not bring your phone with you. Not all the time. You need that sometimes. But if you're not expecting any calls or anything, just leave the phone at home. You'll be fine. Believe me. It's hard to imagine. I know. Once upon a time, we used to do that all the time. There are still many cases where, if I leave the phone at home, I'm like, great. That's fine. When I go traveling, I hardly ever look at the phone except to navigate a little bit. That's because maps have disappeared, and so we use these phone things, but that doesn't really help you to learn the city. So get out of the house, go look at things, go notice things, go just without anything. Don't go out there to do anything. Don't go out there to write something or read something. Just go out into a natural, or as close as you can get to natural environment. And sometimes a natural environment is hard to find in some places, but you still need to find as close as you can get. Maybe a group of decaying buildings. That's natural, more natural than a lot of our normal buildings. Next, remember something I heard Edith Schaefer once say. People are more important than things. And she had heard that from someone else. So this is age-old wisdom. So the live people in your house or at a dinner are more important than the disembodied voices on the other ends of the phones. So why would this person ringing you randomly or sending a text message randomly require more of your attention than someone sitting in your presence? And this is serious to me. Now, of course, I, like all of you, have friends who do this. You may do this yourself. But you have to remember this. For instance, if you have children, every time you're around them and you're distracted, particularly by those devious notifications, and you let them know that the phone is more important than them, that's a message they will never forget. And they will remember that till the day you die. You've taught them that they can just go ahead and be distracted. It's all right. And people are distracted by older folks now. So you will pay for it eventually. You don't see it now, but you will eventually see it. And finally, in this practical category, don't make yourself a tech nuisance. And what I mean by this is, okay, so maybe you think what I'm saying, there's some truth to it. Great. You don't have to agree with all of it. Fine. But if you decide we need to scale back on how much screen time everybody gets, don't make yourself a tech nuisance everywhere you go. Don't be like vegans who are always telling you they're vegans. Don't be the person who shows up somewhere and just makes himself annoying by saying, oh, we don't ever use the screen. Don't walk into, in America, you always see this, you walk into a Thanksgiving dinner and, the family is watching television. This is not the time to go on your high horse and talk about, well, we don't do that during Thanksgiving. You do what you do in your house. But, I've been invited to dinners here in Georgia where someone just left the television on in the kitchen. It is not my job to tell them to put it away. So you need to show more by your own example. In other words, if you get a ding on the phone from someone trying to call you, you expecting anything? No, leave it there. Just keep talking. You don't need to be pulled away by these things. And being a kind of a strident do-gooder doesn't help anyone. If you really want people to change, you can discuss it. You say, this is what we're trying to do, but don't sound proud about it. Next, let's talk about reading, which was the original subject that Brandon was asking about. How do you read and remember? The problem with younger people today is that they get so distracted. And here's the thing. Distraction is the enemy of memory. And that's proved. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first of all, if you're having trouble developing an attention span with your reading, don't start with Tolstoy or James Joyce, even if people say these are the greatest books or whatever. Don't start with Les Miserables or Moby Dick or Blood Meridian, because these will just frustrate you. You are not ready for this. These are like, you've been eating pablum. You've been eating strained peaches as a child. You've graduated up to soft McDonald's food. You're not ready for a serious steak yet. You're not ready for old cheese yet. You're not ready for good wine yet. You have to build up to that. You have to develop your tastes. So what I would do is let's consider reading to be like a muscle that you have to develop. What do? Well, you start with shorter works. I mean, if you really want to start with shorter works, you could just read short fiction, a few pages long here and there. Or you could, I've got a bird outside my window. I put some breadcrumbs down there and they're coming in and I got distracted, but they're fine. Usually it's the pigeons, but this was some little smaller bird. So there are those shorter novels like Animal Farm, The Old Man and the Sea, Brave New World, 1984, Fahrenheit 451, or even some great children's literature, Alice in Wonderland or Alice Through the Looking Glass, The Wind in the Willows, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit. If you haven't read those are great places to start focusing. Learning to focus, because the children's books are written simply, and there's nothing childish about any of the books I just mentioned. Now, I'm not saying to go read Horton Hears a Who. I mean, you're probably a little older than that. You're not supposed to just read some little picture book. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the great works of children's literature. And And the short, we're not talking about the whole Harry Potter series or something like that, but we're talking about things that, all the children's books I mentioned are classics by any standard. And if you read those, you will learn something and you will develop your attention span. You can read a couple of 100-page books and you'll be fine. Next, you actually need to collect a few books. And by this, due to the screen and the effect of the screens, while you might be fine reading on a Kindle or iPad, when you are done reading a book, what do you have left? Your memory of the words. Well, yes, but it's a whole different process. Someone once told me one of my favorite writers is George MacDonald. A younger person once said to me, "Ooh, all the George MacDonald books are for free if I join Amazon Prime." To which I said, yeah, don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do that. You want to go look for the actual novels. And it's going to be more difficult. Because here's the thing. If I dump on you, which the internet does, everything in the world, that doesn't make you any smarter. Because mostly what we do on the internet is skim. And skimming isn't the same as sitting down and reading a book. Now, you might be one of those people who can remember so much of what you read. That's great. But I think for the average person, you need a book, a physical book in your hands. And the reason for this will become clear in just a moment. And one thing I would recommend, although I'm not going to get too much into talking about how to buy books. I think I've been asked to talk about that, but that's going to be something I'll do on Patreon because that's a little more niche than I think most of the people following this channel are wanting. Unless I get like 40 people down below saying, no, do the how to read a book here. Or not how to read a book, that is for here, but how to buy a book, what to look for, the actual conditions and all that stuff. It's a little niche for this channel. But it's not niche on Patreon for me because on Patreon, my Patreon, anything goes, and you should join up. Plug. So, start with authors that you trust. Everyone starts with somewhere, but start with authors that you trust and see where that goes. That's how I've learned pretty much everything that I learned. I became a Christian. I started with the Bible. One of the things that helped me was I read the entire King James Bible all the way through the first time. What that meant is I got that language in my head. And what that did to me is I didn't have a real problem with Shakespeare. Didn't have a problem with Moby Dick. Didn't have a problem with Dickens. Because I already knew how to take older styles of language and translate it into my own current mindset. And also the earlier books of those children's books, particularly Alice in Wonderland and The Wind in the Willows, were things that I had actually read before then, and I just kept appreciating them. Later, I came across C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis led me to George MacDonald, led me to Owen Barfield, led me to Tolkien. Then they reference other people, and it goes on and on. So, once you decided you're willing to go buy a few books, and buy used hardbacks for older books. Don't buy the new paperbacks, especially not the mass market ones, the ones that are the smallest size. You don't want those, because those are that's just basically paper trash. You don't want to support that. You want to go out and you want to get a book that's a hardback. Yeah, let it look a little good. But, you don't have to spend much money. Go to Amazon, you can find, but also Abe Books is a great place to look, and there are some other places. Buy used books, look for hardback, because they're going to last. They're going to look better on your shelves. Then, once you've got a few books, you need to put them on a shelf. And that means you need to organize your books. And the act of organization is what really helps you to remember what you read. Let me say that again. The act of organization really helps you to remember what you read. And the act of digital organization is really weak here. Because what happens? I have maybe 20 files on a certain subject. And what does it do? It puts it all into alphabetical order for me. That's how I've got it arranged on my computers. Well, that's fine, but it's also, an idiot can put things into alphabetical order. To organize books on a shelf, let me tell you how I organize my library shelves. And I've got a video around here somewhere on how to start your own library. And it doesn't have to be big, but the point is this: as soon as you put books on a shelf, you can't just put them in a random order. For one thing, the more books you get, you want to be able to find them again. There's something to the digital process which goes against memory. That's why AI is such a problem. If I go on AI and ask a question, and I've done this, and it spits out way too much information, and I don't know how much of that information is actually correct. It helps. The more I know, the more I can say, it's hallucinating here. It's not giving me the right answer. And that's one way to test AI, is to know something about the subject. But when digital information comes to you, it's often like turning on a fire hose and all of a sudden all this stuff comes out. So what? Did you learn anything? Can you remember all that? No. Why? Because you're also being distracted by half a dozen other things at the same time. You're doing, you're watching something on television while you're typing in what you want, and then, you get some sort of text message sent to you. That's a really hard way to learn anything at all. And so I think what I've observed is the act of touching. This is why I stress physical objects. The act of touching somehow cements it into your brain in a way in which digital files simply cannot. So again, we'll save the how to actually buy and collect books for a Patreon episode. Think about that. Next, as you organize things, ideas will come to you. So right now, I am showing you the shelf where I have, here in Tbilisi, where I have books on fairy tales. I have a bunch more books. They just want to come here, but I just have to raise so much money. Don't think about it, Byrne. But the point is this: I can't just put those up randomly, and alphabet would do no good. So what I have to do is think about it. What comes first? I go like, well, let's start with Greek myths and legends, and then go to maybe Roman stuff would be an obvious point. Then maybe there's some Middle Eastern stuff like the Arabian Nights. Then we'll go into medieval stuff. And then eventually we get into the authors that start to construct fairy tales after the Brothers Grimm and all of this. And so, there's a kind of a chronology and a geography. And that helps me to learn. So I can't put anything on the shelf without knowing what it is. And that is what it's all about. My record library is really not Dewey Decimal. It is, I have my own system and I organize everything. Well, there's three main divisions: spoken word, sound effects, instruction records, poetry. All of that's in one area. Next, classical music and movie scores. And next, everything else, which is the huge section. Now, they're all pretty big. I mean, I've got over 13,000 pieces of vinyl and CDs. But within each, they're all divided by countries. And within countries, it's what style comes first. So there's no way I can even put anything on a shelf without knowing what it is. And knowing what it is cements it. So I went from knowing almost nothing about puppetry to within 10 years being able to talk with the most important person in the history of European puppetry by simply reading and collating the information and putting it together and continuing to do that. And also, when I do anything, if I watch a movie, I'm always watching it on multiple levels. So I'll see a movie, I say, ooh, there's some comedy there. Ooh, there's music there. Ooh, there's special effects there. Ooh, is this also a horror comedy? And suddenly, all this one film has all these aspects to it. And so in my mind, I say, okay, well, this would, I can't put it in every place, but I'll say to myself, let's call this a horror film or call this a comedy. But it relates to, and I have to remember, there's a horror comedy. And if I get others, and I do have others, they should go together. You see, and now I've created this category, and the category helps me to understand. Now, there are these crazy people out there, they're often New Agers, who says, let's not categorize things, let's not call things by their names. To which I'm going like, I don't know. If it was good enough for Adam and the Garden of Eden, it's good enough for today. That is how we learn, through categorization and naming. And finally, as you're doing this, ideas come to you, and you need to find a way to share them. And so if you can, try to share them, as I'm doing here. Even teach them, is this teaching? To share what you learn. And believe it or not, preparing anything to share with anyone else is a way in which you learn much more. So you see, each of these things, I often say the way my mind works is the way my shelves work. And so I can't put anything in my mind without finding the place on the shelf for it when I am experienced. Now, every now and then I will experience something I've never experienced before, and then I'll just say, well, put this over here. It's like in my film section, I have a section for great directors. And every now and then a new director will come along, and I just go, we're putting him in the director's section because we don't know where else to put this guy or girl. So let's end this up with a few thoughts about memory. And memory is really important to me. I have a whole series of 10 or more episodes on time and memory, and a couple of them are devoted to memories and history and things like that. Now, everyone has memories. But remember this, as I said before, distraction is the enemy of memory. So, if you're listening to something, or watching something, and someone is telling you something at the same time, the chances of you remembering that are pretty slight. Or if, let's say, you start working on, you get an idea. This happens all the time. You say to yourself, I need to go water that plant that's in my window in the back here. And then you say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to go do that. And you get up, and just as you do, suddenly there's a ding on your phone from an app or something, and you stop and look at that. And then that tells you something about you've got problems with your bank account or something. And that sends you back to the internet to wonder what the hell is going on. And you forget about the plant. And the poor plant has to wait for another day until your brain remembers again. That's what distraction does. And they say that most people lose information during the moment of distraction. Now, we've created systems in which everything distracts us. So no wonder younger people are having trouble. Also, as you're reading, it's easy to say, but what if someone's trying to get in touch with me? That's what the phone did. And Marshall McLuhan back in the 60s said that the phone, back then it would ring and you'd have to pick it up and answer it. And he said that people started to feel that sound, it was this Pavlovian response. Do you hear the dogs? There's this one dog out there. I know the guy. He's a crazy dog. But here's the thing. Your memory, see, that's a great example of distraction. Where was I? You know what? I have some notes. Your memory is like a muscle, and it needs to be used, just as reading is like a muscle and needs to be used. And this is where AI is really dangerous. I've seen people say, well, why do I need to learn anything more? We have all the knowledge in the world at your fingertips. Let's just unplug everything from electricity for a moment. That happened yesterday. 5 hours without electricity. You know what? Suddenly you start saying, I don't have access to everything. Your access to everything is granted to you by the powers that be. It can be taken away, and it can be taken away in some sort of ecological disaster. It can be taken away in a political disaster. It can be taken away through too much heat, too much cold, whatever. Power lines go down. And also, all of that AI knowledge doesn't mean anything to you because you don't know it. Like I said, when I use AI, I'm always asking questions I already have a pretty good idea about. I'm just seeing if there's any other backup to what I'm thinking. Because I don't want to learn anything from AI because it's not a teacher. It is an aggregator. And it does something similar to Wikipedia, but maybe a little faster. But even then, when I go to Wikipedia, I say to myself, okay, all right, they just didn't get this here. Whoever notated this was wrong. You have to know something to be able to correct something. So, do things to test your memory. Ask yourself questions like, what were you doing of September of 2020? Seriously. Ask yourself that question. Can you remember what you were doing in September of 2020? You can come up with another date if you want. I do things like I go and I have the old charts, the top 30 charts of my radio station KFRC in San Francisco from the late 1960s when I was listening to it. And this was very important to my education. So what I do is I've kind of been constructing playlists to listen to that music to help, not to help my memory. I remember all those songs. But here's the interesting things. So I'll be reading along in the chart and I come to something and I look at it and I say, oh yeah, I haven't heard that song since 1968. And suddenly I start remembering it. Back on the street again. I haven't heard that. I haven't thought of that song since 1968. Do you realize how long ago that was? That was almost 50 years ago. Pretty amazing that we can do that. That's how I test my memory. I test it by going back. I also know how, for instance, if I'm writing and I really want to think about a period, I'll get the music, I'll get images, posters, books, and I'll start putting it all together. And it's almost like a periscope into the past. That's advanced level, granted. But look through your old photos and journals and get these things into physical copies, into physical form. There are these companies like Shutterfly and some others that'll print up your photos and turn them into nice books, which means you really have to cull your photos to the ones that really are something worth prodding your memory about. Write stuff down. If you've written stuff on the computer, print it. Put it in places. Why? Again, we have no idea when there will be some sort of information war, cyber war, and everything goes down. If you're trusting the cloud to hold your memories, you are trusting a physical cloud, and you don't trust clouds. So what I'm saying is this. You need to have physical stuff in order to remember. You don't need a library as big as I've got. You just need to have some physical stuff. And so this is also important. Save things to help you remember. But, and here's the huge but to this, do not purchase pseudo-souvenirs when you travel. I mean, wherever you go, there's all this stuff. I saw all these heads of David in Florence of all these multicolors. And I said to myself, why? Why would you want that? People go and buy these things. So when my mother died, I had to go through all of her stuff a couple months later. And I was just sitting there going like, Mom, why did you buy this? And why did you buy this? All of this is meaningless. And I just threw it out. It has no memory. There's nothing in it worth passing on. However, if I die, my books are worth passing on. The art I have on the walls are worth passing on. So think about that. Buy things that help you remember. For instance, I can do this. I can go up to my library and do this to a majority of books. I can go, where was I when I bought that book? Memory test. You need to make memory tests. Why? It's a muscle. You're using it. Most people can remember certain things. Now, again, I think younger generations now have actually less storage space up there because they put so much screenal garbage in there. But nevertheless, there are things they remember. So if you're like that, start putting in the good stuff. The good stuff is your notes about relationships. The good stuff is books you've read, music that you listen to. Learn to listen to music without distractions, without visual distractions. These are difficult things for us now. They were standard gear when I grew up. And especially remember the important moments with friends and families. And also, so this is holiday events, special vacations or stuff. Do things that will later bring these things back. So that can obviously be photos, it can be journal writing, you can make a YouTube video on the subject, but don't make it for the algorithms. Make it for the memories. That's how you remember. When you're in any situation, if you think about it and you say to yourself, in the future, I will want to remember this. Remember that. Find a way to commemorate it. Now, here's the weird thing. We also need to commemorate the dark times, too. One of the things I picked up when I went back to Alaska last year was not only my whole puppet library and all my journals, which are quite hefty, but I also brought back all of my letters. Now, these are physical letters that people sent to me before, shall we say, up to about the year 2010 is when there was a real drop-off in letter writing from people. But here's the interesting thing. Those are scary. Why? What I write in my journal is what I want to remember. What people wrote to me, sometimes those letters are painful. And here's the interesting thing. They contain glimpses of who I am, for better or worse, for truth or falsehood, that are things I don't want to deal with, but I don't feel I have a right to get rid of them. I feel that they're part of who I am, and they're interesting. So, and even find a way to save email letters. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. What about all this stuff? Well, if you've got longer emails that people have sent to you for important moments and stuff, print those out. Save stuff. Don't be a pack rat. That's not good. But save things. There is a danger of living through text messages only. A danger of all the now stuff just being a perpetual maw that just feeds, eats you up. Don't live that way. If you live so that the past is important, you will be able to find the road to the future. If you don't, all you have is now. And I know people will say, you got to live in the now. Well, what now are they talking about? Now? Now? That now? Well, that's the absurd now. George Carlin makes jokes about this. To me, now is the day. So it starts when I wake up, it ends when I go to sleep. That's now. And during that time, you have a little history. How you started the day, how it went along, what happened during the day, and when you go to bed, how do you reflect back on it? Or maybe you get waken up in the middle of the night. So, but the point is this. Do something to commemorate. It might just be collecting rocks from certain places. I know someone who collected a little bit of dirt from everywhere they traveled. I'm not telling you any specific way, but I am saying this. If you want to learn to read, you also need to learn to remember. And that's how your knowledge grows. So finally, find ways to share with others both your memories and what you have learned. And that is the main point here. So you're developing an attention span so that you can actually go through longer books. So you build up to that. I mean, I've read some books that have taken me months and months and months to read. And they were really difficult. Long novels, idea books, philosophical books and such. But here's the point. Then I turn around and give it back to you. Because there's no point in that stuff staying on the shelf just hanging out. The point is to get it off and find out what have we collectively as human beings learned. And how do I share my aspect, my perspective on that with you. Okay, well, that should do it. I've got plenty more to say. Join Patreon. And that's where I'm putting a lot of stuff now. I'm putting up my 86-part audio history of the 20th century. I've got 4 videos up right now that are early access only, things that'll show up on other channels. So if you want to see what I'm really doing with all of my ideas, that's the place to go. Also, it's a good place to interact besides the comment sections here or Facebook or X or whatever. Go there. There are 2 different tiers. They are not connected. One is the basic gate, the front gate, you might call it. There's no point in joining up for free. I mean, you can look around and go like, yeah, I want to do this, or no, I don't. But you don't have to join up. Join up to It's going to end up being $3 a month because I realize after all the payments are extracted, it's like $1 a month or whatever. It's got to be at least a couple of dollars. The whole point of that is to make a couple of extra dollars to help me out. But then there's a $5 a month for access to the audio actualities. And the audio history of the 20th century is like a $25 one-time buy right now. Then you get the whole thing and you can just download it. And there's more. Puppet book. More stuff is coming. But let's not talk about that. Let's instead say this. What kind of day is it? Have you been outside? Have you taken a walk down your street? If you live in the suburbs, go take a drive to the end of the area. Look for a drainage ditch. Find frogs. What can I tell you? Look for things that are real. And read good books. And I've got a few book recommendation videos around here. Maybe I'll put the playlist at the end here. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And as we say in Georgia, droabit, which means just temporarily. We'll just be gone a little while. And nakwamtis.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.